Yeah, I think participants can join. I mean, are joining. We can start, Dr. Madhukar.
Okay, sure, ma'am. So good morning, everyone, and welcome to this session. It's been a couple of days of hectic learning for you. Very well, we can understand that, and it's not easy to grab all of this, so much of a stuff, in such a short span of time. It takes a while to actually assimilate, ingest all of this data, all of this knowledge which has been passed on. So thanks for your patience. And in this session today, I'll be talking about the use cases, some of them which are already in production, some of them, I would have worked or associated myself, with some startups that I've worked on. I'll talk about those as well. So we'll discuss a lot of these use cases today, because a technology is better understood when we understand the implementation part of it, right? So in order to appreciate anything, that's why people also say, right, you need to get hands-on with it, right? So if you want to appreciate a blockchain, or the impact that the blockchain can make, what is required is, we need to understand where it's being used, how people are leveraging it, what's the benefit that they derive out of it. That's what is important. Okay, so let me actually get started with this. First of all, why are we have been discussing about all of this? Why blockchain, right? There are so many technologies out there in market, right? Why blockchain of all of them? Okay, so the major reason, that we see from a technology point of view, where blockchain can really make a difference is whenever you find a place, whenever you find a situation where there can be a potential for some manipulation, potential for some fraud in the transaction, blockchain, yes, of course, will really help. I can give you a few examples to this, right? We often buy a lot of things from online platforms, and most of the time, if not most of the time, few times we really get into a situation where we ordered for something and we got something else. This is so much prevalent. What I really see today is these days is a lot of cosmetics that you order online, right? What you actually order versus what you get is nowhere comparable. So you will get forged things that you actually get in against the order. For a genuine brand, you don't get that brand, right? So there is a lot of potential for fraud in those such transactions, and this is small value. Let's talk about big value transactions, right? Even the scope is even bigger there, right? Another thing is, whenever there are multi-party transactions, right? Two universities, three universities collaborating, discussing with each other. Let's say multiple researchers from different organizations brainstorming on some idea, right? Now, there can always be a case where there can be issues with the reconciliation of whatever they've been discussing, right? We call it as friction. So such dispute management, in case if any, yes, blockchain can be a good way of reconciliation. Yes, it really helps there. Furthermore, use cases where there is an inherent need for trust between the transacting parties, right? Because that's the most important element whenever we do business, whenever we collaborate, right? So trust is most important there. So whenever that is the case, yes, blockchain can be a good fit for technology adoption. And hence, we talk about, or rather we'll talk about major domains like finance, like governance, like healthcare, like supply chain, where blockchain has really been successfully used. It has made an impact, as ma'am initially pointed out. One of the speakers yesterday, who actually shared the experience about how they are using blockchain in governance. And by the way, India is very high on utilization of blockchain, right? In governance, let me tell you, the current government is really very gung-ho about adopting blockchain in, and they have already put in use blockchain into so many use cases which are right now in production as far as government is concerned, right? But before we get into the blockchain use case space, we really need to understand where and why we should be using blockchain. So we already discussed a few things, on the previous slide. But we should definitely understand one point: blockchain is not a one-stop solution to everything, because the amount of overheads that a blockchain brings along, there should be a proper trade-off. There should be a proper thought process getting into. Should I be using blockchain, or should I be using other distributed technologies which can really, make my life as simple as it would have been with a blockchain? So that thing. So whenever there is a problem to solve, right, a business problem to solve, whenever there are multiple parties transacting an identifiable business network available, whenever there is a requirement of trust in a network, right? Yes, blockchain is a good fit, right? Whenever we need a permanent record which should be immutable, indelible ledger, yes. Whenever we want, there should be no central point of control or central point of ownership, right? It should be more distributed. Everybody should have the same rights on the network. Yes, blockchain makes sense. Whenever we can convert the business rules into smart contracts, into business decisions that can be governed through the code, yes, blockchain can be a good fit there, right? Again, a rider there, if the data is only used by one organization, probably it's not a good use case for blockchain, right? We typically talk about blockchain implementation when there are multiple parties, external stakeholders coming together and interacting, transacting, doing businesses. That's when we say yes, blockchain can be a good fit. This is a slide which I've adapted from the World Economic Forum's study, which talks about the characteristics of high potential use cases, right? So whenever we see that there is a requirement for a shared repository. If you remember, in my previous conversation, I was talking about, in conventional businesses, everybody maintains their own ledgers, right? So the data is available, but then data is in silos, not talking to each other. So that really actually leads to a lot of discrepancies in data, because everybody has a different view of a transaction at any point in time, right? So we would like to replace that with a shared repository so that everybody has the same view of the transaction, and there are no scope for any sort of disparity there. Number two, whenever there are multiple entities engaging, multiple writers to this shared repository that we are talking about, it can be so many use cases we already discussed, and we'll be discussing a few. So whenever there are multiple writers up as part of that overall network, yes, blockchain potential, it's a potential blockchain use case. Whenever there is any certain level of mistrust existing between the parties, yes, and most important, whenever there are one or more intermediaries or gatekeepers which are present to enforce trust. Now, if you remember in the last conversation, we said, why blockchain? Because it helps in removing the intermediaries. When I'm saying intermediaries, I do not mean regulator guys, okay? In last session also, I said, my conversation is focused more on private permissioned blockchains, right? And in that case, what we discussed was, a role of regulator is still there. If you remember the actor chart, which I was talking about, the actors in blockchain network, there was a regulator still there, right? We did not take away that. So we are talking here about multiple intermediaries or gatekeepers which are there to infuse trust between those transacting partners. Yes, in that case, blockchain is it's a potential blockchain use case. Whenever there are transaction dependencies, right? Whenever there is dependencies between somebody doing X and then there is a workflow, then Y will do something based upon X. Let's say typically a leave management system in your campuses, in your colleges in case. So let's say a faculty has put a leave request for tomorrow, right? So the leave request will actually go to head of department who will approve. Then it might actually go with the dean of academics who would approve. And then finally it might land up with the registrar who needs to approve, right? I'm just cooking it out. So you see that there is a workflow happening. So there is a dependency of transaction. The registrar cannot approve unless the chain below has approved. It will not be visible to him, like that. So in such situations, yes, blockchain can be a good potential blockchain use case. Okay. Feel free to put your question on chat, guys. I will actually take it up in some time. This is just a snapshot which talks about the potential blockchain use cases, very loosely. We will discuss some of these implementations as we go further in my conversation today, right? So typically in banking, right, you see often, right, there are so many historical evidences where we see things that the banks have been cheated by the lenders, right? The people who have been taking loans from the banks, right? And there have been so many ways that they've been cheating the banks and hence converting the loans into the loans which cannot be repaid, right? So another cases there is, people you look to launder money, right? And hence KYCs are again a very important part, plays a very important part, right? You might remember the famous case of Nirav Modi, right, where there was this case of letter of guarantee, which was the way it was used, issued, forged, all of that, right? Cross-border payments, right? Maybe we'll dig deeper into this, right? So these are a couple of use cases which are very common in banking industry. Similarly, if you talk about from an insurance industry, right? So proof of insurance, claim processing, some of this, by the way, is already on blockchain today, guys, right? So after the intervention of the regulatory authority, the insurance agencies, insurance companies have now brought in a couple of use cases on blockchain, right? So dispute resolution, right? In order to speed up the process, in order to make the process more transparent, yes, they are adopting to blockchain. Financial markets, for post-trade settlements, asset tracking. There are so many examples which are like there, right? Like high value paintings, right? Diamonds. There are a couple of companies which are actually working, or already solution is already live, right? Like that. So they are using blockchain for actually trading of diamonds, and so many more, right? Right. So similarly, right, there are so many similar other use cases in different segments, like travel and transportation, right? uh, People, this is the most low hanging use case, the airline loyalty program, or even for that matter retail loyalty programs. People have been using blockchain or trying to use blockchain in so many ways, right? Automotives, I guess we talked about this in the previous class as well, right? Where Boeing has been using the parts provenance for the supply chain. They've been using blockchain, right? And that then they can be used for so many other things as well, in this segment. So similarly, media and entertainment, this is one industry which is being, really looking to adopt to blockchain, because we know that there have been so many issues about rights for the scripts, right, for the intellectual property rights for whatever they create, right? They have been using blockchain. In life sciences, this is one area which has been really which needs a lot of blockchain adoption, right? From tracing of counterfeit drugs. In India, out of 10 drugs that we use, it is said that 6 to 7 drugs are spurious. They are counterfeit. So much is the perforation of the cold chain. Cold chain is the one in which the drugs are actually transported, right? So there is a lot of counterfeit drugs in the market today. Blockchain can help solve that. Similarly, the health records, whenever you go to a path lab or a hospital, the records that you generate, whether it's your x-ray, whether it's your path lab report, or whether it's your any report, right? The way it's being used currently is something that you do not have a control over, isn't it? These path labs can sell this data to pharmaceutical companies, to hospitals, to other stakeholders, without you even being aware of that your data is being used, right? So that's one area which really requires a strong adoption of such technologies. Again, in public sector, we already have been using it. We have been seeing how government is using blockchain for land records in a couple of states in India, right? Not just that, for notarizing of documents, for registration of motor vehicles. All of these areas are the ones which are most low hanging fruits for adoption of blockchain. Energy and utilities. This is one area which is already using very strong utilization of blockchain as a technology, right? For exchange of carbon credits and settlement of the same. Other is, people who are actually using unconventional energy sources like wind bills, like solar. What they are doing is they are actually selling the surplus electricity back to the grid, and the entire system is basically on a blockchain network, so that both the buyer and the seller are ensured that the whatever documentation is happening, whatever money or the units that they are crediting back to the grid are sort of put in an indelible ledger, right? Something like that. So we'll talk about different use cases from food industry point of view, from supply chain point of view, cross-border payments, digital identity, and more, right? So again, this is what we were just talking about, right? How in healthcare people are now getting control of their own medical data, right? So that they can increase the quality of care, they can actually monetize the data that they create, right? Similarly, in automobiles, the entire supply chain traceability is finding a lot of traction with blockchain, right? We discussed this, I guess, in the last call as well. So let's say now when you take a four-wheeler to a service center, or your two-wheeler to a service center, and let's say one of the parts in the vehicle has conked off, has actually gone down. Let's say crankshaft of your engine has failed or broken, or the piston is sort of not creating the adequate pressure to generate the work for the horsepower, and the mechanic says you need to replace the piston, or you need to replace the crankshaft, or you need to replace the piston rings, whatever, right? So the first question that he asks you is, what do you want to put in, original or local? That's the question, right? Well, how would you like to replace it? Original is a costlier one, local is sort of cheaper one, and normally the tendency is to go with the cheaper one because from a financial point of view, right? But the point is, let's say an example of aeroplane, right? That you fly in, you fly in between Delhi to Jabalpur, or you go from any part of one, within a country or outside a country when you fly. So typically a plane is supposed to be flying for X hours. When I'm saying X hours, it can be 100 hours, it can be 200 hours. After flying for that many hours, a plane has to go for a mandatory fitness test, for which it is being, it gets a fitness certificate from DGCA. Unless a plane gets a fitness certificate from DGCA after the stipulated number of flying, the plane cannot take off without the fitness certificate, right? And before getting a fitness certificate, the plane actually gets through a rigorous test, right? A rigorous maintenance test, wherein every moving part, everything is checked in a plane before the engineers issue it a fitness certificate. Now, let's say in some such situation, there is a requirement of replacing certain part in aeroplane. Let's say some part. Well, I'm not a aeroplane expert, so I can't name what goes all into it. But for sure, it has an engine, so engine will have some moving components, right? So let's say there is some part in the engine which needs to be replaced, or which is nearing its aging. Let's say if the part's life is 30,000 hours, it's almost like 30,000 hours, and it needs to be replaced before a plane actually can take off. Now, again, the same question, whether you want an original or a local, right? Let's say if the aircraft maintenance engineer asks the same question again, a local or a original, right? And unfortunately, if somebody looks to replace it with a local for some reason, whether it's the inventory it's not available in the inventory, or it's way too costly, or whatever reason, right? Think about the consequences it may actually fetch, right? A plane which is flying at, let's say, 35,000 feet or 40,000 feet above, right, the sea level, what can happen? And what can happen to the people who are flying into it, right? It can be a real disaster. And that's the reason why organizations have started to put their spare parts on a blockchain based ledger, so that each part, where is it going, where is it getting fitted, can actually be traced back to the manufacturer. And that way it gives a lot more confidence to the user, to the DGCA, to you and me as flyers, and everybody, right, in the overall system, who are going to be impacted with it, right? So that traceability in supply chain is so much more important, right? And this was just from one automotive segment. Similarly, as we said earlier, right? Today we talk about digital content, whether it's movies, whether it's music, whether it's advertisements, anything. So there has been a lot of there's been a focus on actually bringing all of this on a blockchain based systems, right? Okay. So yeah, so in India, Mahindra has been working with IBM, to create a common blockchain platform for supplier to manufacturer transactions. If you remember, when I was giving the previous session, I talked about an infograph. I talked about a slide where I showed you there are hundreds of stakeholders in a car manufacturing, ecosystem, hundreds of them, right? From manufacturers to OEMs to, people who are actually integrating some assemblies for manufacturer and all that. They are brought together and then they come to the assembly plant where all of them put together in a car or a vehicle to, complete. But what is happening at the back end is there are multiple companies coming and, contributing to this overall ecosystem. And that's where the supply chain visibility or the trust on the supply chain is really important in terms of the component vendors or, the engineers or, the regulator getting a view of it, right? So, yeah. In couple of European countries, as far as automotive is concerned, they have also started to actually the EV, the electric vehicles, which are with their driving, there have been cases where they're using blockchain for, multiple ways. People are leasing out the vehicles on a blockchain based ledger, right? Even that is a use case today. Similarly, in the banking and finance sector, right? There has been a lot of transformation. This is one area which is really seeing a lot of transformation there, right? So those of you who would have their friends, families, overseas, and who know the process of cross-border payments, right? They would understand and appreciate that it's such a tedious and costly affair, right? When you transact money from one part of the globe to other part of the globe, right? You end up paying transaction fee at both the sides, some 7 to 10% of transaction fee at both sides. And of course, it's not a transparent and quick process. It takes some time. With blockchain-based systems, we are looking to revolutionize that. The settlement time is almost real time compared to a couple of days. Even today, when you actually go to a bank and do you deposit a check, let's say you have I often give this example, right? So let's say, one of our participants, let's say Samir has a birthday, today is Saturday. Let's say he has a birthday on Tuesday, right? And, he wants to take all of us for a birthday party. Let's say it's not COVID times. And he has actually, chartered a plane for all of us to take us to Singapore to give some party around Marina, right? And, he has good amount of money. So let's say he has 5 lakhs, 10 lakhs as in his account, and he has a check for 50 lakhs, which he can deposit, and he has kept this 50 lakhs only for his birthday celebrations. Now, unless this 50 lakhs, which is in form of a check, gets deposited into the bank account, he will not be able to use it, right? So let's say he deposits the check today, or maybe he deposited the check yesterday. So by the time it will actually come and reflect in his account, it will take some T+3, normally T plus X, excess 3 here, T+3 days of time for getting the check, reflected in his account, right? Getting that check cleared. And if it is a different bank check, then it might even take up to 5 days time, right? So that sort of delay. Now, see, Samir has 50 lakhs, but then it's basically, in form of a check, which will take some time to get, converted into his account, right? So despite his best intentions, he may not be able to take all of us on a chartered flight to Singapore, right? Because the check did not get cleared in the time that was needed, almost real time. Now think about similar situation in today's scenario. On an everyday basis, there are billions of dollars which are stuck in the banking system, right? Why? Because the clearance time is not real time. It takes some amount of days, 3, 4, 5. Now, business is always done with money. Unless there is liquidity, unless there is money in the system, you cannot do business on promises, right? So Samir cannot make a promise to the charter plane company that, I'll pay you 5 days later on, you please fly us today, right? Because my check is stuck. Or maybe, he cannot actually make a payment, or he cannot promise a payment to the hotel in Singapore saying that, my check will get released in 4 days, I'll make a payment then, right? They will not actually accept that. So think about those billions of dollars which actually get on a daily basis in the banking system. Why? Because there is no daily or no real-time clearance. Had that much money there been in the system, in the pipeline, which is getting stuck, people or companies could have done better business with that money, right? So that's the beauty here, right? That's how, blockchain has the potential to transform banking and financial services, right? Yes, and then let me go further, right? And yes, of course, we can, for governance, blockchain is simply a boon, right? I would say, right from voting to fraud prevention to compliance, blockchain is something which can be utilized everywhere, right? Right from asset registration, I'm sure most of you would have encountered this. Often we encounter that, somebody who is owning the land, right? Say, the flat that you own, or the house that you own, you may not know 50 years back who was owning that land, and even for that matter, that land may be stuck in controversies. There might be multiple parties claiming their right to the same piece of land, right? The way it happens today, right? The way the land records are maintained. So that sort of fraud prevention, that sort of compliance can be inherently built into a blockchain-based system because of the cryptographically secure data, right? So that's the beauty that blockchain provides or brings to the table as far as when utilized in the overall governance for various activities, right? Think of another example, and this is already live, by the way, right? The fertilizer subsidy that the government gives to the farmer, right? It's been some time when you might have heard that farmers have not been able to get fertilizers, right? Or the amount of money that's been, because subsidized fertilizer was actually sent in, done a lot of black marketing was done with that, right? Now with the blockchain based system, there is no scope of doing this, right? I can give you one example here. Sometime back, I was working with a startup in Hyderabad, and as part of my previous role, right? And they were looking to, okay, before I start with that, how many of you over here have heard about chit funds, right? Just give your answers on chat. You can put like a yes over there. Okay. Okay. So heard about chit funds, right? Absolutely. So what is the first thing that actually comes to the mind when you hear chit fund? What's the first impression that comes across the mind when you hear about chit funds? Fraud, scam. Yeah, you're absolutely correct. Yeah, there are tens and tens of cases where there are this fraud of around chit funds, right? Scams. So we were working with this startup, right? And they were looking to create a solution for bringing chit fund business on blockchain. And you know what? Chit funds have been a phenomenally successful way for small savings, small savers, right? People, household savings. Few parts in the country, few states in the country are very high on chit fund, particularly West Bengal, particularly few states towards South, Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, Kerala. There are there is a big turnover. Annual turnover is into hundreds of crores from a chit fund point of view, right? Okay, somebody is saying they don't know chit funds. Okay, so maybe we'll take that discussion later on. But just to give you a perspective, chit funds are very small, effective. There's effective mechanism of a small savings. Just like you might have heard people forming committees, right? Where 10 people come together, they pool some X amount of money, and then one of those 10 people take that money, utilize it some meaningful manner, whatever they want to do with that money, for 1 month. The next month, somebody else's turn to pick that money, the entire booty up, and then they're going to use it. That's what is typically in a very most basic sense, right? But then when you talk about from an organized point of view, then chit fund business is a lot bigger, where there is a regulator, a state government. It's a state government subject, right? Where there is a regulator, the stamps and revenue department is the regulator for the chit fund business, and then there are multiple companies which basically open up chit funds. They open up, people subscribe to those chit funds, they put money in those. It's not chit coin, it's actually chit funds. So So a lot of that stuff happens. So this company was looking to bring chit fund business on the blockchain stuff. And I was actually working with them from IBM's point of view. And believe me, they struggle to. Okay, I'll take these questions in a while. So believe me, we all have studied. You all have studied blockchain, in the last 5-6 days. So I'm sure you may have understood one thing very clearly, that blockchain is an effective way to have a irrefutable proof for any transaction, right? We talked about immutable ledgers. We talked about blockchain where all the transaction records are maintained and all that, right? So that means whenever somebody is giving money to anybody, or whenever somebody is making a promise to somebody, committing to somebody, it's no more, can we put in air? It's basically documented, recorded on a blockchain. You can come back after even 100 years and you can revisit the record there, right? Which will be, of course, which cannot be tampered with, right? Now we made a presentation to the chief secretary, a couple of people from the Department of Revenues, stamps and revenues and all, just to give them a view that how important was blockchain as a technology in terms of making chit funds scam free, right? And after almost like a year of that, meetings, showing POCs and all, they finally agreed. Now the point I'm trying to put over here is, we did not actually try to do away with the regulator. We actually onboarded the regulator. Why? Companies will not actually look to adopt to some such situation, some such solution where there is inbuilt compliance. Why? It takes away the power of manipulation from the company, right? Any company who's used to do manipulation in the sector would like to keep that thing open. With blockchain, you take away that power of blockchain, you take away the probability of doing a manipulation with the system, right? That's what is the benefit of using blockchain. So after all those conversations, finally the Telangana government agreed, and the solution actually was developed. It was adopted by the government, and not just government. Niti Aayog actually saw the value of that solution, and gradually it was adopted in many other states across India, right? So my point is, the compliance, the government checks, the government that wants to put it is anyways embedded in the solution, so there is no scope of fraud, right, in such a system. So blockchain in governance is so much important. So today you see all these people who are not paying their taxes, or who are not paying their different kinds of taxes, whether it's GST, whether it's in form of way bills. People create forged records to save all that. Gradually all of that will go away, right? Because government actually on the back end is using technologies like blockchain, AI and all, right? So you will see in a few years from now, I'm sure those of you who are keeping a tab at the news, they will really appreciate that in last few years the number of taxpayers have increased drastically, manyfold in India, right? Just because all the systems, all the KYCs are getting in place, government is able to track what we own, what we don't own, which are the bank accounts, because now there is a single KYC across all the different banks, right? So earlier people used to give one document to one bank, another document to another bank. That way there was no connection between the two accounts, right? Which is not happening today. Today, with everything is tied up with one ID, and that is really adding a lot of transparency to the overall system. So that means governance really gets a leg up when you talk about utilization of blockchain based technologies, right? This is another good example. We just talked about it briefly, where the patient data data in healthcare segment is really means the patient can be in control of who uses their data, in what way do they allow the utilization of the data and all. So blockchain tools can really help that way, right? Okay, we talked about insurance a while back. Right now there are a lot of insurance companies which are using blockchain for risk coverage, for actually making the claims processing. Earlier it used to take a lot of time, and companies used to deny a few claims as well for finicky reasons. Now they cannot do that. They have to be a particular, reason which will get recorded, and you can always go back and you can always open it up. You can always counter it, right, with the right set of information, right set of data, right? Why did you deny my claim, right? Like that. We already talked about that in royalty settlement, in advertisement settlement, in digital rights management, how blockchain is actually being used today, right? Oh, let me take a pause, and I would just let me have a look at the various questions that are there in the chat before I go forward. Okay. Okay. In the meanwhile, in case you have any questions, guys, please feel free to put it on chat. I'll be happy to take it up. Let me just have a look. Okay. Hemang, towards the end, I'll take you through a link through which you can join a community of blockchain users, blockchain developers that will help you enhance your learning. Also, the same link can help you to get prepared for blockchain related jobs. It will give you a lot of learning content there, right? Likita, where we can use a blockchain for insurance claiming, where the stakeholders, the hospitals. So if you would have heard me, the solution is already live right now, Likita, and both in terms of insurance claiming, yes, it is there. From an end user point of view, you would not know how it is being used because you do not connect directly. You would not, it's abstracted from you, right? But then underneath, yes, it is there. In a justice system where FIR oath through all changing due to high external pressure, why no one in the world, any government thought of blockchain? Look, Anant, the answer lies in the question, right? And if you might have heard me, nobody wants to give up that power of manipulation, right? Because everybody is leveraging that for their own sake. This actually reminds me of a very good use case I can share that I had been associated with in past, right? So there was a startup, right? And this use case had been in works for some time. This was around 5 years back, right? So in India, if you recall, there had been a lot of cases of accidents on road where people have been stopped on gunpoint, on a highway, and they've been looted, and all sorts of things happen in vehicles, right? And despite your best of trying to reach out to a PCR or calling a 11100 or calling all those numbers, nobody turns up. So I'm trying to answer to you, Anant. So there was this startup that we were working with in Bangalore, right? And the idea was this, Anant. It's basically it ties back to what the question that you have put across. Now, this startup was looking to create a solution for a vehicle whereon in the review mirror of the car, right, and inside the car, they put up a device, audio video, right? There was a camera, there was audio, the recording facility, and that also had a location tracking system, right? The latitude, longitude could be captured from that device, right? So they had this device installed in the review mirror of the car, and this device was connected through multiple panic buttons which are installed in the different places in car, like under the seats, on the side panels, on the roof, at places which can be easily accessible just in case. So what the overall the scope of work of this device was, someone who is trying to stop a car on a gunpoint, or something wrong is happening inside the car, the passenger inside the car can reach out to one of these panic buttons, okay? And the moment the panic button is pressed, one of the panic buttons is pressed, the device inside, which is installed inside that rearview mirror, it starts to broadcast the audio video of whatever is happening inside the car to a backend server, okay? And what it also does along with that is it also creates a notification ticket. It also creates a ticket on the police headquarters server, wherein it carries the date, time, the latitude, longitude of the device, and then the application at the police headquarters looks for the nearest PCR van to this device location, so that the PCR van can be guided to this car or wherever this device is, so that they can be of help. And whatever is happening inside the car, the same is captured, means the audio and video is captured on a blockchain based ledger. Why on a blockchain based ledger? Because in the court of law you need to prove that this was happening, right? So this recording of audio video will actually act as a proof in the court of law. Why? Because this is inimmutable, right? You cannot alter the content which is recorded on a blockchain based ledger. So the law should see the value into the technology adoption, right? So if you remember in my previous conversation on in a previous class with you, I was telling that somebody was asking the question that how much data should I be storing on a blockchain, or what's the ideal data capacity. So I was telling there, normally we talk about KBs, right? We talk about footprint of transactions to be stored in blockchain. That's the ideal way to do. But in use cases like this, where we are looking to create an irrefutable proof that can stand in the court of law, there have been use cases where we have been storing the audio and video on a blockchain based ledger as well, though it becomes too heavy, of course, right? The way it is right now. But then, this is one aspect of utilization, which we cannot discard, right? So what happens there is, in this case, when there is a ticket generated with a date, time, location, latitude, longitude, and the device ID, the car ID, the police cannot go back and say that they did not receive any call, they did not receive any intimation that any mishappening was going on in some place, right? Typically, this is what people actually give as an excuse. Similarly, the judiciary can actually use the evidence collected there for convicting whosoever is the accused in this case, right? So it's like it gets a concrete evidence, on tamper proof evidence is created. So I hope that answers your question, Anand. Okay, let me go down further. Which industry will be most affected by blockchain? Sanjana, every industry is looking to adopt to blockchain, and actually the idea to adopt is to streamline the processes, to be more compliant. When you are more compliant, the businesses thrive, right? Okay, means money is there. Why don't he pay from the account in which the check is? Look, Anand, the check is available check is available to him, but that check will only be unless he deposits the check in the bank, right? He cannot tear the 50 lakh check in 4 pieces and give 25 lakh to one airlines company, 25 lakhs to a bank, I'm not saying bank, 25 lakhs to the hotel, right? He needs to get 25 lakh in his account before he can give away a check, right? And normally checks are subject to realization first before you actually can leverage the any facility, right? So that's what was the reason of giving that example. Okay. Yeah, chit funds, I'm sure most of you are aware of. Yes, thank you. Thank you for responses there. What is the use of common blockchain in daily life? Guys, every day you buy food, right? Okay, I'll give this example later on. Hold it for a while with me. With buyer and seller considered as nodes in blockchain based land record solution, do we expect them to hold and secure complex private keys? No. Buyer and sellers are only users of the system. The onus of maintaining these keys, these ledgers, will not be on the users. They will be on the stakeholders, like the organization, government organizations which are managing the land records and others, right? So it will not be the onus of the people. Rajiv.das.cgc.org. Yes, you will be able to register with this email ID. In case not, Rajiv, please reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'll be able to help you. Abhi Singh, how blockchain can be used in e-commerce? Okay, good question, right? So let's say you bought a high value product from some online shopping portal, right? So what you did was, when you were actually buying it, you were getting into a contract with that company. What was the contract? The contract was, you are paying 50,000 rupees for buying the X product which belongs to some brand and which has certain, what specifications. Now, when this contract, when this engagement is blockchain governed, what happens is, uh, in case you get a spurious product, in case you get a wrong product, in case you get a product which is not up to the, or which is not the same thing that you actually ordered for, the company stands liable for compensation. First of all, the company can't do that. Why? Because at the back end, the company will be connected to the supply chain of that X brand which you have bought from that online buying portal, wherever you're buying it from. So this way, the entire system is, there is no scope of fudging, there is no scope of manipulation, there is no scope that the company, the e-commerce company, can send you a wrong product. It can be a issue with the logistics, that is always possible, but then otherwise, they cannot send you a fictitious product and wash their hands off. That is what actually we're talking about here. Okay. How to use blockchain as a startups. So blockchain as a startups means, whenever there is a startup idea, guys, that's when you try to see what technology fits in to convert that idea into a product or a MVP. That's when blockchain can be a probable thing, right? Shreyas, you have experience in Solidity. Okay, so Shreyas, maybe what I can do is, towards the end, I can guide you to some code patterns or GitHub repos where you can get some more hands-on content there. Okay, who determines the cost of blockchain of cryptocurrency? So guys, we are not talking about cryptocurrency here, and there is, I think you need to reframe your question. Bitu asks how blockchain is useful for in agriculture field. This is absolutely fantastic, Bitu. I'll give you one example which is very close to my heart. All of us know that today the fruits, the vegetables that we buy are contaminated big time, right? Whether it's use of pesticides, whether it's use of the way it is grown today, which is not conducive. All of us know this, right? And the major problem that a farmer or the producer faces is finance, right? That's the reason you will see so many farmers stuck up in loans, and unfortunately, few of them even take their lives for that reason, right? When they are not able to repay the loan. Now think about it. Let's say 100 people come together, because every day we'll be using vegetables, every day we'll be eating grains, right? What if 100 people come together and form a corporate, right? Or maybe some sort of a society together, and each of them pool, let's say 10,000 rupees together each, right? 100 people into 10,000 rupees comes up to be a good amount, right? Or maybe 20,000 rupees, right? Whatever, let's say your annual budget of grains is, let's say, 50,000 rupees or 40,000 rupees. How about these 100 people coming together and pooling this 40,000 rupees and giving it to a farmer, or maybe a couple of farmers, which can help these farmers to actually do a organized, organic farming. And what in fact will happen is, you as a contributor will be able to get an organic produce directly from the farm, which is proven. You are sure about that there are no pesticides, there is no, this product is absolutely good to consume, right? And the farmer does not get into that debt trap. Why? Because he is getting money for putting the seeds, for tilling the farm and all that. At the same time, he is assured that there are buyers of the crop, right? So agriculture is awesome, where you'll be able to help, you'll be directly able to influence the lives of farmers, and at the same time you can be able to help yourself also in the entire process. And why blockchain? Because blockchain provides that sort of confidence to both the stakeholders, to all the stakeholders for that matter, that there will be no cheating in the overall system, right? So that's how blockchain. And then this is just one example I'm talking to you about. There are so many such use cases available in agricultural space. Okay, Anchit says possible to prevent user information breaches. Yes, it is very much possible, Anchit. Each time, maybe you connect with me separately, I can help you. It's a longer answer. I don't want to take everybody's time with this right now. Okay, Math3 says 2 states has implemented blockchain for land revenue registry. How can I get information about that? So Math3, you can find there are white papers available. If you search online about these. you will be able to get this. Blockchain in a small area. Blockchain is not about area. Blockchain is about number of people, transacting between each other. So if there are multiple people, multiple organizations, multiple agencies transacting with each other, yes, blockchain can be explored. Sahil says even a cow can become an asset on the blockchain. Anything can become an asset on the blockchain. Anything which is getting transferred, which bears some value. Cow bears a value, right? There are cows and buffaloes which are worth lakhs and crores, by the way, right? So that's such a costly entity, costly commodity, right? So yes, anything can become an asset, right? You see these fungible tokens, right? Every now and then, this token, that token, they are actually becoming an asset, right? Why? Because people are putting money into nothing, right? Okay, yes, blockchain is there in almost every field users. It's absolutely correct. It's important to have blockchain in e-commerce domain. Anant, in agriculture industry, most grains are wasted in storage, please. It is, of course, very much feasible. So I'll give you an example, where IBM has developed a food trust chain, to which there are a lot of partners already, which are there, like Nestle and all. We'll see that example, in a while. Anant, please hold on. Country like India. Okay, let me go further, guys. There are a lot of questions pouring in. Cannot afford the food wastage. Absolutely, I agree with you, Anant. We will see that, more of it. Blockchain is not similar to cryptocurrency, guys. Cryptocurrency is the application of blockchain. So the underlying technology in a cryptocurrency is anyways blockchain, right? How can we use blockchain in a startup which is working for rental things? Singh, Abhi, absolutely good. A lot of startups are already using blockchain for rental things. Look, in a rental thing, what is the couple of pain points? Pain point is you get what is being committed by the owner, right? Number two, you return what you actually got. The condition of the product should be the same, right? So all those things, all the managing of those aspects is something which should be key, which is key, and this is something which blockchain can really help us with. Yes, Gaurav, we can put video, audio, images in blockchain. E-commerce example. Yes, the ideal thing would be, Gulab, that e-commerce vendors adopt blockchain. Few of them are already bringing a few processes on blockchain also. Anant, is good for supply chain. Supply chain is based on demand. What if I cannot change the price? Of course, you can change the price. It doesn't mean that something which is written in the smart contract cannot be changed, right? It was never meant. Smart contracts are always, can always be updated with new versions, right? If you remember, we talked about that. All the stakeholders should agree to it. Singh Abhi, you can just search by name Mani Madhukar. You'll be able to find me. Okay, no, blockchain cannot be started by anyone. You need to have a consortium approach for adopting of blockchain. Is farmer is the asset of blockchain? No, he is actually the user. I'm not talking, Ronak, not discussing about the mining here. Okay, Anchit, please connect with me on LinkedIn. Blockchain is highly secure, guys. So please be assured that any data which is brought on a blockchain has the highest level of security. We talked about, when I was talking to you about the IBM blockchain platform, IBP, right, which is highest, security compliant. Kuldeep, asking about use of blockchain in mass media. See, Kuldeep, in mass media, there are so many use cases possible, right? Ownership of the content that you produce, right? Let's say you captured a beautiful photograph, right? And you put it in some photography competition now, or you put it online, right? So somebody has downloaded that image and somebody is using it without paying you any royalty or anything for that, right? It's a infringement of, your right as a owner of that image, right? And same goes for anything else. There is a script, there is an idea, there is a movie idea, right, which somebody wants to get patented, or maybe somebody's already patented and somebody else has created a movie on that, right? This has been a case, right? Or writes about a music album, writes about the script, right? So all of those are actually use cases for mass media. Sorry, Gulab says, for cow and buffalo example, it's needed to put some tags Gulab, for animal identification, there are tags, RFID tags, which come today, right? For all, the livestock, people use those for identifying the element, identifying the animals, right? So that's something that can be always used for things. Okay. Okay. Samir, blockchain utilization in defense for inventory management. See, Samir, blockchain is not a right technology for things like inventory management. But yes, blockchain is a good technology to use when there are multiple organizations coming together. For example, the user of the ammunition is army, right? Or let's say some division in army, right? Who is the user? Then there would be a producer like the government ordnance factory, right? And then there may be some more stakeholders in this network, maybe some more suppliers, right? Which would be part of this overall network. So when you bring all of them together, that can be a good use case, but then not for inventory management of ammunition, right? Okay, guys, I guess we have taken enough questions. You can still keep putting your questions. When we have big data not feasible to host on blockchain, how do we leverage blockchain over there? So Gulab, the authenticity of the data or the authenticity of the derivative of that big data is something that can be used on a blockchain. As I said earlier, we need not bring the entire data on the blockchain, even though, see, we are referring to some data. If we are sure about the data, so if we actually bring a footprint of that data, footprint of the transaction on the blockchain, even that is enough to ensure that nobody would fudge with the data, will not manipulate the data, right? So we don't actually, Preeti, you don't need a permission from government to start a blockchain, right? Unless the process requires a government, or it's a government-owned process. Unless that is the case, or you want to implement blockchain there, you don't need a permission from government to start a blockchain-based solution. Okay, guys, let me take a pause from questions. Let me go further because I have a lot to cover. I'll not be able to actually cover my entire piece then. Yes, in travel and transportation, again, blockchain have been getting utilized. A lot of fleets, right? The transportation fleets today have been using blockchain. I can give you a small example to this effect, right? Often we see that Ola and Uber vehicles, right, are which are plying on the road. The person who has taken a license versus a person who is driving the vehicle are different. Just a small example to you. Now, let's say there is Mr. X who has taken a license, who has got enrolled with Ola, and in Mr. X's name is the license to run the vehicle. And what Mr. X does is he has a driving license because of which Ola has given him, allowed him to take his vehicle on the road. But on the road, the vehicle is driven by Mr. Y, and maybe Mr. Y does not even have a driving license, right? Now, Mr. X was too overburdened, or he has some other day job, so he actually passed on the vehicle to Mr. Y to drive it. Now, the problem is if some untoward incident happens, if some accident happens, right, because of Mr. Y's carelessness, or maybe Mr. Y's incapability to drive the vehicle efficiently, who would be who will own the thing? Who will own this entire episode, right? So, see, this can be beautifully solved right now. There are multiple external parties. Insurance companies are a stakeholder. Ola is a stakeholder. The person who is actually taken the license, who is enrolled with Ola, is again a stakeholder. There's so many of them, right? So the point is, had there been a system that before the vehicle starts, it checks for the credentials of Mr. X in some manner, or Mr. X has to key in his credentials before every ride starts, right? If that can be the case, then it can be ensured that each time a passenger is boarding a Ola cab, he is riding with the legitimate Mr. X, who is rightful driver for the vehicle. And then there can be so many other examples for this, right from, as we said, for a playing, how Boeing is using for the parts provenance. There can be so many such other things. Okay, see this. Somebody was talking about supply chain management, right? So the potential impact of blockchain is really substantial. When you streamline the processes, when you have a more transparent view of the inventory, when you actually have a more improved asset utilization, blockchain can impact up to 5% increase in global GDP. 5% in global GDP. Just imagine the amount of increase it would be, right? Similarly, it says 15% of increase in trade volume today, right? The amount of deficit that we have, if this 15% increase happens because of utilization of blockchain, it can revolutionize the world. It can really save the world with so many prevalent problems like hunger, like inadequate food, like medicines not reaching to everybody. So many things can really get solved, by streamlining a couple of these things, right? Why? Because it is the distrust between these organizations. I'll give you another simple example, guys, before we go on, right? Now, most of the time, we feel like doing charity, right? I'm sure all of us have a soft corner, for somebody who is needy, right? We always want to pull out our wallet and we always want to help somebody who is in need for something. With particularly in last 2 years, if you see the amount of empathy, people have, started to have for people who are needy, who are in requirement of something. It's been tremendous, and it's a very good thing. We should be generous, we should be giving, right? We should have this tendency. If we are capable of, we should be able to share with somebody, who is not capable of having it. There is no harm in it. It doesn't make us any poor. But the point is, often what we really have in our mind is, what if the money that I'm giving away, is it going in the right place? Is it really being utilized for the right reason, right? That's one thing which always withholds ourselves from making charity or doing big, donations, right? Let's say I put in 10,000 rupees to some trust. Whether this trust will actually be using 10,000 rupees for the betterment of the people here, or will they just be, making merry with my money? This is often a problem. Now think about, how about a charity which is basically managed on a blockchain based system, right? So you can see everything, everything is transparent. You can be assured that the money that you have committed to the, to the charity organization will not be misused, right? It will be put into the right use, because everything is managed in a manner which has a record for it, right? And it can be not be a manipulated or a spurious record. It will be a genuine record. That's what as a person I'll be more than happy to put my money on, so that it can be used for betterment of people, right? So today when I go to a orphanage making some contribution, I do not know how the organizer, how the management is using that money, right? I have no visibility of that, right? That's something which always holds me back, right? Or which always gives me a feeling which stops me from doing what I want to do, right? So see, that sort of trust is not there. So if you can bridge, if any technology can provide me with that trust, that's what is blockchain, right? And hence it can really streamline a lot of processes across the globe, because it provides for that visibility, it provides for that data consolidation, and importantly, data cannot be fudged and data cannot be manipulated there, right? Providing me with that tracking, transparency, and trust. That's what is the benefit, right? Whether it's supply chain, whether it's any segment, whether it's healthcare records, anything that you talk about, that's what is the benefit of actually bringing blockchain into the total system. Okay. Okay, I am not getting into this right now. We will talk more about this in a while. Please do not worry if I'm skipping a few. Let me start by this, right? Because I have a lot of things to talk about, right? So this is one example which I would like to start with, getting into the detail, and there has been a lot of interest, from the questions also that you have talked about. I see that, right? Now, in the food ecosystem, think about people who do not get a square meal a day because of any reason, whether they are not able to afford it, or there can be multiple reasons, right? At the same time, you will see those pockets where the food gets wasted on a day-to-day basis, right? The amount of food is surplus, the number of consumers is less, and the lot of food actually gets wasted as well, right? uh, this is one part of the story. There is another part of the story. What's the other part of the story? The food that we consume is actually not right food to be consumed. Why? It can be stale, it is not up to the mark, and because of which we get ill while we consume that sort of food, right? That's another problem there. uh, uh, Again, the food that we are considering not eatable, maybe that is eatable, right? And we are not sure about it right now. How do I actually be sure about whether a food is consumable or not? I do have no means. Today I have no means for that, right? So there are so many reasons because of which the food actually gets wasted, guys, right? And there is a lot of fraud existing in the existing food ecosystem, right? Whether the farmers are, or the suppliers, or the hoarding agents, the storing agents, wherever, right? There are a lot of scope of, there are a lot of places where there are a lot of the fudging and fraud things happens there, right? Now, all of these issues and so many other are there, one, because of lack of transparency. There's no transparency in the overall food chain today, right? So most of you who would have breakfast in the morning today, I'm not sure what you had, but typically, if you are joining us from north of India, then you might have a paratha. If you're joining us from south of India, maybe you might have a idli or a sambar, it's like a staple food there, right? If you're joining from northeast of the side of the country, then you might have something like something else, right? But the point is, at any point in time, can you confirm to yourself that the food that you ate, where did the ingredients come from? Do you have that visibility? I'm asking you as a question. Maybe you will not have that visibility. If I ate aloo parathas this morning, then I do not know where was the aloo sourced from, which part of the country did that aloo come from, when was it reared from the ground, on what temperature was it maintained in the cold storage, how long was it actually stored in the cold storage. I have no idea. That's completely opaque from me. There's no transparency in the system, right? That's what is the challenge, right? That's what is the challenge in the overall system. So what I'm going to talk about is a food trust system solution that IBM has come up with. A lot of our collaborators like Carrefour, like Walmart, like GSF, for different food items. Let me take a pause here because I see a lot of questions, and I want to answer them so that people their quest for things are. Just a moment. Okay. Okay. Ashutosh, if private key or wallet is compromised, how to recreate private key, like change password in case website data is compromised? Ashutosh, maybe I'm not able to get the question. The key is basically managed to a wallet, right? So we are not talking about compromising of wallet here, right? So and then how does it actually, you're talking about compromising the website data. Maybe I'm not getting the question. Maybe I'll revisit it, or maybe you rephrase the question. How is IBM contributing to quantum computing? Rishik, there is a lot of content available in case you want to, learn more about quantum. It's available on IBM Academic Initiative website. Not just that, there is a complete course on quantum, right from taking you what are the qubits, what's the quantum, how are they being used, all of that is there. You also can get access to IBM Q, which is IBM's quantum computer on cloud, which you can make use of. You can run your example, your labs, your practicals over there in order to learn more about quantum, right? And we keep doing a lot of learning programs. You can be a part of that. Preeti, blockchain is already used in a lot of educational fields. You might have seen recently IIT Kanpur has issued the credentials on blockchain, which PM recently inaugurated when he went to the for convocation to IIT Kanpur. Before that, there had been a lot of universities which have been using blockchain for issuing certificates, credentials. Not just that, people have been using blockchain for issuing experience certificates as well on blockchain, right? Okay, not sure it get contaminated, what it is a reference to. So there are a lot of already utilization there. We can create blockchain where food will not be wasted. Blockchain can help in, giving a transparent view of the supply chain so that the wastage is eliminated. That's the idea, right? What is foodborne illness? Anything that you eat which is not eatable, Preeti, and because of that, when you get ill, whether you get stomach, you get a stomach is upset, or you get a feeling of dizziness after consuming it, or you get a vomiting feeling after consuming it, and then there can be so many more foodborne illnesses. I'm not a right expert for talking about that. Yeah. So okay. Manish, I visited vegetables farming in my village. How tracking is done? Good question. So, normally the tracking is done right from farm to the plate. We call it from farm to your plate, right? Um, right from the. So I'll just deal with that. Please hold on to this question. I'm going to cover it in detail later. Poonam Koda is another platform particularly used, for blockchain transaction oriented. It's a platform most suited for financial transactions. From yeah, okay. Samir asks, um, blockchain can be used in situations where there can be some sort of black marketing. Yes, of course, Samir, it's absolutely good use case for blockchain, because anything which is on blockchain, that means, let's say somebody who is storing, right? You will have a complete view who is holding how much stocks, and in case they're using it later on for selling at higher prices, everything can be tracked and well in time, right? So it's absolutely possible. Okay, Anant, I'm not sure what Mr. Santosh was talking about. Um, I'm not sure, Santosh, which chart are you talking about? Um, Public blockchain, we can know other entity. No, we cannot know anybody's identity, right? Gulab, for food ecosystem, seems very challenging. What I can see, we need to put seeds, fertilizer, and dust. Absolutely, you're right, Gulab. It's very challenging. It's very big. There are a lot of so many stakeholders. I will just go further into the slides, and you'll be able to see that there. And hence, it's a very good use case for blockchain. That's what blockchain is going to do, right? Simplify things. Does farmer also needs to be educated about blockchain, or just supplies? No, Vinay, we do not need to have that much of them, but there's yes, there has to be some bit of knowledge sharing with them about what are we doing, because when you put those barcodes, or when they put those barcodes on the boxes that they are shipping from the farms, they need to know what they are creating, what they are doing, right? Blockchain maintains transparency. How can I recognize in case of vegetables that is selling vegetables fully organized? Hold on with me. I will just share that answer to this question in a while with you. Okay, guys, let me at least cover this before we wind up, or we take a break at 11, and we'll come back. So let me dig into this this food chain example. So this is not a very old solution, guys. This is only a couple of years old when we made this food press solution generally available. And we have so many partners already onboarded, right? From Nestle, Carrefour, Driscoll, Walmart, Topco, GSF, Wakefund, and so many others, right? 150 plus global companies are now on this food trust ecosystem with 12 million plus transactions of 8,000 plus products, right? Which are already there, right? So what they are doing, let me just skip this first of all, and then I'll come back to this. See, this is what is the current problem, right? There are, in this overall food supply chain, food ecosystem, there are restaurants, there are growers, there are retailers, there are manufacturers, there are logistic companies which are coming together. Now, all of them are transacting with each other, right? They are getting some product from one place to another place, buying it from some grower. But the problem is they're all maintaining their data in silos, right? If at some point in time you want to actually trace back something, you will not be able to do in a reasonable time. That's where this entire food solution actually started, when there was a E. coli virus outbreak which happened in one of the Walmart showrooms in US. And because of consuming that contaminated cabbage, few people even lost their lives, unfortunately, right? So that's where the entire thing of, and before Walmart could actually track where did this cabbage actually was sourced from, it took some time before they could actually, and they were not able to take it off the shelf, right? So that's where the blockchain based food supply chain is really making a difference, right? See this. See this. So in this food supply ecosystem, there are multiple stakeholders, right? From farmers to logistic guys to retailers to restaurant owners and all those things, right? The idea is to bring all of them on a single platform, right? And where they can see the entire location of the food. They can trace the location and status of food products both upstream and downstream in the supply chain, right? Not just that, in order to add reliability and accountability, right? Let's say if somebody is source fish from some vendor, right? So there should be a certification. When was the fish caught? What temperature was it maintained on? How long is it good to eat? All of that thing. So that sort of certification ensures the reliability and accountability of that product, and that's all in digitized form, right? Similarly, if anybody wants to access in real time, where can I buy something fresh, where can I buy some X product, what is the shelf life of my product which is already in my inventory, all of those insights can be pulled in real time here, right? And it's really easy to onboard on this system, right? Third party onboarding, it's very easy to do that. So that's what food supply chain typically talks about. I'll just show you a demo maybe. Yeah, see this. We did a pilot with Walmart for a mango, right? Wherein we had a package of peeled mangoes, sliced mangoes, and which this is the supply chain, right, from grower to the person who is storing it, to the to the logistics company which is transporting it, to finally to the Walmart or some other company which is putting it on the shelf, peeling it, getting it sliced and all, right? In a typical manual paper based model, in order to track one packet, it took 6 days, 18 hours and 26 minutes to check, or rather get a information where was this mango sourced from, because our food chain is so complex and all, right? But with a food trust digital solution, it took just 2.2 seconds to identify it. Now let's say this mango is contaminated for some reason. So in the conventional manner, by the time you would have actually recalled the product, maybe everybody would have consumed it in different stores because it took you 6 days plus. But with a food trust digital solution, within 2 seconds you will be able to get the information, and you can immediately recall the product which is contaminated, right? So that's what is the power that the blockchain system provides, right? So as we are talking about it, it provides value to the entire food chain, right from farmers to the manufacturers, to the wholesale distributors, to consumers, to food retailers, logistics guys, certification bodies, right? Government has so many certification agencies, but today there is rampant problem in that, right? It's so much broken everywhere, right? So all of these typically the food service, the regulators, right, all of them actually will be leveraging the food supply, the trust which actually is coming out from this food supply chain. So guys, I'll take a pause here. I'll just finish with the remaining questions here, and then when we come back after at 11:30, maybe I will take the remaining I'll cover the remaining part of the session then. Gulab, you're absolutely correct. To maintain the food ingredients quality, IoT needs to be integrated. IoT and blockchain is a natural marriage, as I said earlier also, in my last session, right? So yes, IoT is definitely a good fit when we talk about that. Okay. Is it possible that a person who fully understands blockchain technology can manipulate it? No, it's not possible. Likita, IBM's initiative in insurance claiming since the data can be very big as it includes everything. So as I said earlier also, we do not